Good morning. Welcome back to Risk Management and Insurance. We have defined what risk means, the various forms for which risk can manifest. We talked about the financial, we mentioned the operational, we mentioned the reputational. We also talked about the strategic risk and the operational risk. Now we start at the environmental, social, and governance risk. We shall continue with the explanation of the ESG. It is another wonderful form which risk can manifest. Shall continue with that. Environmental, social, and governance risk. Environmental degradation, social unrest, and governance failure. Governance failures present emerging risks for businesses and investors. Climate change related risks such as extreme weather events, regulatory changes, and transition risks associated with the shift to a low carbon economy are increasingly relevant. And community, they're increasingly relevant. And the social risks include issues like labor practices, human rights violations, and community relations. Governance risks encompass issues such as board diversity, executive compensation, and regulatory compliance. Now, integrating ESG factors into risk management frameworks and investment decisions is becoming essential for sustainable business practices and long-term value creation. First, we want to talk about environmental risk. Environmental risk talks about social unrest, and governance failure. For businesses to thrive, and investors. It also includes climate change related risks such as extreme weather events, regulatory changes, and transition risks associated with the shift to a low carbon economy, which are increasingly relevant. The social risk talks about issues like labor practices. Issues like labor practices, human rights violations, and community relations. The governance risk. The governance risk encompasses issues such as bird diversity, executive compensation, and regulatory compliance. This is what government or governance risk entails. Therefore, integrating ESG factors into risk management frameworks and investment decisions is becoming essential, important, pivotal, pertinent for sustainable business practices and long-term value creation rather. We also have the legal and regulatory risk. Legal and regulatory risk. These are laws and regulations which govern various aspects of business operations, including compliance, contracts, intellectual property, and consumer protection. As such, non-compliance with legal and regulatory requirements can result in fines, lawsuits, reputational damage, and even criminal penalties. Regulatory risks also include changes in legislation, policies, or enforcement practices that may impact businesses' operations, profitability, and competitive position. Effective risk management involves staying abreast of relevant laws and regulations, implementing compliance programs, and engaging with regulatory authorities proactively. Legal aspects, they include laws and regulations. The legal and regulatory and laws and regulations which govern various aspects. various aspects of business operations, including compliance, contract, intellectual property, and consumer protection. And consumer protection. The regulatory risks also include changes in legislation. Also include changes in legislation, policies, or enforcement practices. That may impact businesses' operations, profitability, and competitive position. The regulatory risks also include changes in legislation, policies, or enforcement practices that may impact businesses' operations, profitability, and competitive position. Effective risk management involves staying abreast of relevant laws and regulations, implementing compliance programs, and engaging with regulatory authorities proactively. We also have emerging risks and black swan. Emerging risks are those that are not yet fully understood or recognized, but have the potential to cause significant harm in the future. Black swan events, coined by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, are rare and unpredictable occurrences with severe consequences and defy conventional expectations. Examples include COVID-19 pandemic, financial market crashes, and geopolitical conflicts. While it is impossible to predict or prevent all black swan events, organizations can enhance their resilience by fostering a culture of risk awareness, scenario planning, and adaptive strategies. These additional forms risk illustrate the multifaceted nature of risk and its implications across different domains. Effectively managing and mitigating these risks requires a holistic approach, informed decision making, and proactive measures to protect against uncertainties and potential losses. We then move on to the nature of risk. The nature of risk is complex and multifaceted, encompassing various dimensions and influence its characteristics, perception, and management. With that, we want to explore some of its aspects of the nature of risk. We are told that it is it is multifaceted and complex. It is complex and multifaceted, encompassing various dimensions. As influence, attributes, perception, and management. With that, we'd like to explore some of these aspects in detail. We have probability and impact. At its core, risk involves the interplay between probability of an event occurring and the potential impact or consequences of that event. Risks with higher probability and significant impact are generally prioritized for mitigation or management. Let us itemize them first. Then the characteristics, the nature, the dimension, the characteristics, the perception and management. We want to explore these aspects in detail. We need to itemize them first. Number one is probability and impact. Number two, uncertainty and variability. Three, volatility and dynamics. Four, interconnectedness. And interdependency. Perception. and behavioral biases. We also have trade-offs and opportunity cost. Adaptability and resilience. You have context dependence, temporal dimension, complexity, and non-linearity. We have globalization, and interconnectedness. We have technological advancement and innovation. We also have the cultural and social influences. These are the nature, the perception, the attributes, the management of risk. We then explain them one after the other. For probability and impact, at its core, risk involves the interplay between the probability of an event occurring and the potential impact or consequence of that event. Risk is a higher probability and significant impact and generally prioritized for mitigation or management. Therefore, understanding the relationship between probability and impact helps stakeholders assess and prioritize risk based on the potential severity and likelihood. Let's take a look. Understanding the relationship between probability and impact helps stakeholders assess and prioritize. Risk based on their potential severity and likelihood. That is the brief explanation of probability and impact. Now for uncertainty and variability. Risk is inherently associated with uncertainty and variability, making future outcomes unpredictable to some extent. While probabilities and statistical models can provide insights into the likelihood of certain events, there is always a degree of uncertainty due to factors such as incomplete information, unforeseen developments, and external influences. Managing risk involves acknowledging and mitigating this uncertainty through scenario planning, sensitivity analysis, and risk diversification. Uncertainty and variability have been explained. Uncertainty and variability. The risk here is inherently associated with uncertainty and variability, making future outcomes unpredictable to some extent. While probabilities and statistical models can provide insights into the likelihood of certain events, here we have factors such as incomplete information, unforeseen development, and external influence. The volatility and dynamics. Risk can exhibit volatility. Risk can exhibit volatility and dynamics, with conditions changing over time in response to internal and external factors. Market risks, for example, are subject to fluctuations in asset prices. Market risks, for example, are subject to fluctuations in asset prices, interest rates, and economic conditions. Environmental risk may evolve due to climate change and ecosystem degradation. Therefore, understanding the dynamic nature of risk requires continuous monitoring, adaptability, and agility in response to evolving situations. First, we explain the risks involved under volatility and dynamics, and we try to explain the probable solutions. Once it is been understood, the dynamics of such risk, which requires continuous monitoring, adaptability, and agility in response to evolving circumstances. This is like being proactive. Should such crop up, should such happen, what can be done to mitigate against such occurrence? Risk can exhibit volatility and dynamics, with conditions changing over time in response to internal and external factors. Market risk has been cited as a very good example. This is because of its fluctuations in asset prices, interest rates, and economic conditions. We also talk about the environmental risk happening due to climate change in the ecosystem degradation. And here, understanding the dynamic nature of risk requires continuous monitoring, adaptability, and agility in response to evolving circumstances. So, as I explained, volatility and dynamics. Now I want to go to interconnectedness and interdependency. Interconnectedness and interdependency. Perhaps we should write all this, and when we get there, we'll explain them. We will look at them and explain it, so that our explanations and judgments can be neat, straightforward, and easy to understand and digest. Interconnectedness and interdependency. Risks are often interconnected and can propagate through complex networks and systems, amplifying their impacts across multiple domains. Systemic risks such as financial crisis or global pandemics highlight the interconnected nature of modern economies and societies. Interdependencies among different risk factors can create cascading effects where the failure or disruption of one element triggers chain reactions elsewhere. Now, what can be done? Recognizing and managing these interconnections is crucial for mitigating systemic risks and enhancing resilience. There are some risks that are interconnected. One depends on the other to thrive or function, thereby amplifying their impact across multiple domains. Financial crisis, global pandemics are interconnected in nature. They are interconnected in nature to modern economies and societies. Therefore, interdependencies among different risk factors can create cascading effects, either from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top, where the failure of disruption of one element triggers chain reactions elsewhere. Therefore, recognizing and managing these interconnections is crucial, it's important for mitigating systemic risks and enhancing resilience. We have the financial crisis, global pandemic. In modern economies and society. Perceptions and behavioral biases. The perception of risk can vary among individuals, organizations, and societies, influenced by factors such as cognitive biases, cultural norms, and past experiences. People may exhibit risk aversion, risk neutrality, or risk seeking behavior based on their attitudes, beliefs, and preferences. Behavioral biases such as overconfidence, loss aversion, and hardened behavior can distort risk assessment and decision-making processes, leading to suboptimal outcomes. Therefore, understanding these psychological factors is essential for designing effective risk communication, for designing effective risk communication strategies, and promoting informed decision making. Perception, one's view. The perception of risk can vary among individuals. Their view, the school of thought, varies among individuals, organizations, and of course the society at large. This is grossly influenced by factors such as cognitive biases, reasoning. The way we reason differs. That is what we call cognitive biases. Cultural norms, cultural complexities, and past experiences. Cognitive norms and biases, cultural norms, tradition, and past experiences. People may exhibit risk aversion, risk neutrality, or risk-seeking behavior based on their attitudes, beliefs, and preferences. Behavioral biases such as overconfidence, loss aversion, overconfidence, loss aversion, and hardened behavior. All these can discuss risk assessment and decision-making processes, leading to suboptimal outcomes. And decision-making processes leading to suboptimal outcomes. That is what perception and behavioral biases entails. We also have the trade-off and opportunity cost. You have the trade-off and opportunity cost. You also have adaptability and resilience, context dependence, temporal dimension, complexity and non-linearity, ethical and moral dimensions, globalization and interconnectedness, technological advancements and innovation, cultural and social influences. With that, we have come to the end of today's class. When next we meet, we shall begin with the trade-off and the opportunity cost. So bless you all. Thank you for listening.